I'm Tony Perkins, and you are listening to Washington Watch. And once again, we're broadcasting live from Southern California from his channel. Check him out, hischannel.com. All right, as I mentioned earlier, the NCAA had earlier in the year rattled their saber, so to speak, a little saber rattling, threatening to pull out their tournaments and championships from states that dare protect women's sports from biological men. Well, the left is now complaining because the NCAA did not follow through on their threats. Why? Well, because too many states have been passing these common sense pieces of legislation. In fact, on Tuesday, Louisiana's Fairness in Women's Sports Act was sent to the state's Democratic governor after it passed the Senate last Thursday by a 78-17 bipartisan vote. Louisiana Governor John Bel Edwards has 10 days to take action on the legislation, which, among other provisions, makes athletic teams or sporting events designated for females, girls, or women open only to students who are biologically female. While the governor has previously called the legislation unnecessary and discriminatory, the bill's sponsor, State Senator Beth Mizell, hopes he will see the overwhelming support both in the legislature and in the public and sign the bill. She joins us now outside the the Senate Education Committee in the Louisiana legislature. Senator, welcome to the program.
Hi, thank you, Tony. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, thanks for stepping out to join us. This bill passed by 2/3 majorities in both the House and the Senate, so it's really a veto-proof vote if the timing works.
Well, if the timing works and if there's not a fear of the governor taking funding from legislators' districts. So it's a little bit of a different scenario than voting for the bill. I mean, we had such strong support. I would hope the governor would look at the representatives to the state of Louisiana speaking out loudly for their constituents on both sides of the legislature and hear that, loud and clear and not veto it, because it's something people, I believe the last poll was 83% of the citizens of the state support a protection for women's sports. So anyway, I'm hopeful that he'll hear that and the legislators won't be forced into a veto session where they have to vote with the fear of losing the governor's budget pen, right?
Every state is different. I happen to know the way Louisiana operates a little bit better because I spent almost a decade there in the legislature, and Louisiana has a very strong executive, controls a lot of the budget allocation, and so what Beth is making reference to is that if you don't go along with the governor, your district doesn't get any money. And when I was in, my district didn't get a whole lot of money. Because I voted against the governor's taxes and other things like that. But this is the support was overwhelming for this. Is there any word that the governor has been lobbying legislators on sustaining a veto?
No, I haven't heard anything of that. I know there's some movement to work with him as far as some bills that he'd like support with. To not veto the women's sports bill. So, there's some movement around behind the doors trying to protect that bill from being vetoed. And like you said, I heard you say before I was on the call that the NCAA, I mean, where are they going to play ball? I mean, there's too many states standing up for women's sports to basically boycott all the states that have put this into effect. So I'm hoping he'll realize that, because I think what he wanted to use was the economic problem, and that's apparently not going to exist.
Right. I read where New Orleans tourism officials have said the legislation could damage the state's economy. Sports leagues, business groups, and other conventions would show a willingness to boycott the state. But what we have found, Senator, from other states like North Carolina and Georgia, that if you hold your positions, they ultimately realize they cannot defeat you. And North Carolina continues to have one of the strongest economies in the country, with more and more people moving in, more businesses moving into the state. So that excuse has been used many times, and it's really worn out. I think people appreciate the stand that you're taking and doing what is right, not what the business community that has been consumed with this wokeness is calling for.
Well, I think it goes back. I'll have discussions with colleagues. I don't know when it became popular to take away opportunity from one person and give it to someone else. I mean, that's not the way opportunity is supposed to work. You create your own success story, not by taking it from a generation of women that have worked really hard to get to the level of athletic ability that they've reached. And to pull that away in such a way, it makes no sense to me. So that was the premise for the bill that we stood by, because that was exactly what, in my mind, the bill was about. Women have worked really hard to get to a scholarship level, and to have that taken away by someone who is biologically different and more physically able to outrun a woman, it's not the way things should be working. So I think my colleagues, in a bipartisan way, Tony, I mean, we had it in both houses, a bipartisan support of the bill, and I think it was clearly, standing for women. So that was the message, and I think people understood it that way. It was not. There was nothing discriminatory in the way that we approached it.
Senator Mizell, final question for you. What, if anything, can folks in Louisiana, we got a lot of listeners in Louisiana, what can they do to help you out at this point?
I think let their representatives or senators know, so that if we do go into a veto session, they know that they have support back at home to override that veto. I'm hoping we don't get to that. But in the case we do, we're going to need some strong resolve to support the legislators taking a hard stand. It's never, I think there's been one veto override.
Right.
I had never even been told that, so I'm hoping we don't go there. So
it's very difficult.
I think, and I think for folks over here to know that their folks back home back them up is going to mean a lot when they get to situations like that.
All right, we'll certainly do it. We'll encourage people to call their legislators. Senator Mizell, thanks so much for joining us today, and thank you for your hard work on this.
Well, thank you. Take care, Tony. Come back to Louisiana.
I certainly will.